Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, hit subscribe so you'll never miss the most courageous dog tales we share every day. What if the most beautiful promise you've ever made was broken not by a tragedy, but by a lie? What if the very things meant to bring you comfort were targeted by someone consumed by hatred? This is the story of a little girl's silence, 8 loyal Labradors, and the bitter man who tried to tear their world apart. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, hit subscribe so you'll never miss the most courageous dog tales we share every day. What if the most beautiful promise you've ever made was broken not by a tragedy, but by a lie? What if the very things meant to bring you comfort were targeted by someone consumed by hatred? This is the story of a little girl's silence, 8 loyal Labradors, and the bitter man who tried to tear their world apart. Havenwood wasn't just a town, it was an emotion, a feeling of safety and community that resonated from the heart of the Montgomery family. Marcus and Lena were more than just top-tier service dog trainers, they were philosophers of the animal soul. Their 8 Labradors weren't just dogs, they were an extension of their family, each with a name, a personality, and a purpose. This was their beautiful world, but as we know, every beautiful painting has a shadow. For the Montgomerys, that shadow was named Frank. Frank, a man whose own life felt like a failure, watched their success with a venomous envy. He saw the dogs not as heroes, but as symbols of everything he could never be. Then, the world shattered. It wasn't a random event. It was a cold, calculated act of sabotage. Frank, in a moment of pure, blinding rage, had tampered with the Montgomerys' truck. The crash that followed wasn't an accident. It was a murder. But the truth was buried with Marcus and Lena, and the official report called it a tragic, inexplicable mystery. Chloe, their 6-year-old daughter, survived physically, but her spirit, her voice, it was completely gone. She retreated into a silence that was more terrifying than any scream. The town mourned, but for Chloe, the only solace, the only thing that felt real, were the 8 Labradors. They were the last echo of her parents' love. Max, the eldest, a stoic and powerful leader, would stand guard at her door, his presence a silent promise to protect. Belle, the most nurturing, would press her head against Chloe's hand, a physical reminder that she wasn't alone. They were a living, breathing testament to her parents' legacy. But Frank's bitter hatred only grew. He saw the dogs as a threat, a constant reminder of the family he had destroyed. To him, they were just dangerous animals that needed to be dealt with. As Chloe's grandparents, Samuel and Ella, struggled with a mountain of bills, Frank began to plot his final, vicious move. The financial reality hit Samuel and Ella like a freight train. Every bill, every vet visit for the dogs, was a nail in the coffin of their savings. They loved the dogs, but they were facing an impossible choice, providing for Chloe or keeping her last link to her parents. When Samuel finally broke the news to Chloe, she didn't cry. Her silence, however, was a scream that tore their hearts to shreds. She retreated, building a fortress of pain around herself, refusing to eat. Think about this for a second. When a child retreats into silence, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a primal defense mechanism, a final fortress to protect a heart that's been shattered. But for a dog, silence isn't a wall, it's an invitation. They don't need words, they read emotions, they sense pain. This is a crucial distinction between human and animal empathy. The dogs, with a bond forged by years of training, understood the threat. They knew their time was running out. They began a desperate, coordinated effort to reach Chloe. One by one, they would bring their leashes to her door, dropping them with a soft thud. It was their silent language, their plea for her to not give up. Frank, meanwhile, was circling like a vulture. He called animal control, fabricating stories, claiming the dogs were a threat to the community. He was twisting their synchronized, loyal behavior into a narrative of aggression, using their greatest strength as a weapon against them. This is the ultimate betrayal. Frank is exploiting the very love and discipline that the dogs embody. He's weaponizing their loyalty. This scene is a powerful metaphor for how evil can corrupt good, how a lie can be built on a foundation of truth. But the dog's quiet persistence was a force of nature. One morning, Chloe opened her door. Her eyes met Max's, and in that gaze she saw not just a dog, but a promise. She took his leash, her hands trembling, and clipped it to his collar. Then, one by one, she did the same for the others. This wasn't just a walk, it was a silent act of rebellion. She was fighting not for her own voice, but for the family she had left. That day, the town of Havenwood witnessed a miracle. Chloe, small but fierce, led her 8 Labradors to the park. The townspeople, torn between Frank's whispers and their own instincts, watched in stunned silence. The dogs moved like a single magnificent entity, a living tribute to their lost trainers. They were near the lake when the air grew still. Max, the leader, froze, his body rigid, his senses on high alert. Something was wrong. Across the water, a child had fallen into a perilous trap, a powerful undertow and a half-submerged tree trunk. The child was trapped, struggling, but no one had noticed. That's when the dogs sprang into action. This wasn't a random rescue, this was a choreographed mission. Max plunged in, followed by the rest. Luna and Rex, the strongest swimmers, cleared a path, while the others on the bank barked, drawing attention. Here, the dogs aren't just reacting, they're demonstrating years of complex, selfless training. Each dog has a role, a purpose, a command ingrained by the hands of Marcus and Lena. Their actions are a testament to their parents' lives, a final, heroic act of legacy that they are carrying out. It's a beautiful, heartbreaking scene of a promise fulfilled. From a distance, Frank watched, a bitter snarl on his face. He wanted the dogs to fail, to prove his lies were true. He wanted chaos. But instead he saw perfect order. He saw Max gently grip the child's shirt, saw Luna and Rex work in perfect sync to push the heavy tree trunk, and saw the other dogs create a perimeter of safety. The town watched in awe as the dogs, with unbelievable precision, brought the child to safety. The parents, frantic and tearful, rushed to their child as the crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and gasps. Frank, defeated and exposed, slunk away, his plan utterly destroyed by the very creatures he sought to eliminate. The world saw a miracle. But for Chloe, it was a confirmation. Her family was still here, still fighting for her. The rescue video was an instant wildfire. It wasn't just a local news story, it was a global phenomenon. Millions watched in awe as a tiny girl and her 8 loyal Labradors saved a life. The world learned about Chloe, her silence, and the family's struggle. The donations came flooding in, a tidal wave of generosity from strangers who were moved by the unbreakable bond. But Frank was not done. In a final, desperate act of malice, he used his influence to file a lawsuit, accusing the Montgomery dogs of being dangerous and unsupervised. He argued that the rescue was a fluke, and the dogs were a threat that needed to be put down. The lawsuit turned the town's relief into outrage. This wasn't just about the dogs anymore. It was about fighting a bully, a man whose jealousy had caused so much pain. The community rallied. Lawyers offered their services pro bono, and the family of the child who was saved testified on behalf of the dogs. The courtroom became a battleground of good versus evil. Samuel and Ella presented Marcus and Lena's detailed training manuals, their lives' work as evidence. But Frank's lawyer was relentless, twisting every fact, every photo, to paint the dogs as a menace. The fate of Chloe's family hung in the balance, and in the center of it all Chloe sat, a silent witness, her hands on the leashes of her 8 loyal companions. Everyone held their breath, wondering if the girl who had lost her voice would ever find it again. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. The judge was about to deliver a verdict when Chloe, her tiny frame trembling, slowly rose to her feet. The room fell silent. All eyes were on her. Then, in a voice that was soft yet powerful, a voice that had been gone for so long, she spoke her first word. "Frank." The word was a shock, followed by a memory so vivid, it broke through her silence. "Frank broke the truck," she whispered, her voice gaining strength. She recounted a detail she had suppressed, the specific tool he had used to tamper with her parents' vehicle. It was a detail only a child with an eidetic memory could recall, a detail that had been overlooked by police. Her first words were not a plea but a testimony, a powerful act of justice that brought the entire courtroom to a standstill. This is the moment. This is the catharsis. Chloe's voice didn't return out of a need for comfort, but out of a need for justice. Her first words were not to comfort herself, but to defend her family and honor her parents' legacy. This shows us the profound power of courage, and how even the quietest voice can hold the biggest truth. The judge ordered an immediate investigation, and based on Chloe's testimony, new evidence was found, leading to Frank's immediate arrest. The truth, buried for so long, had finally been unearthed, brought to light by the one person no one expected. The dogs were not only acquitted, but were declared heroes. The community's donations rebuilt their lives and created a foundation in Marcus and Lena's honor, dedicated to training service dogs for children in need. The story ends not just with Chloe finding her voice, but with her finding her power. The tragic silence that once filled her home was replaced with a new symphony of barks, laughter, and a sense of profound justice. Chloe's journey was a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, the truth, courage, and the unwavering love of a loyal family can lead you back home. If this story ignited a fire in your heart, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story of courage and resilience. And tell us in the comments below, what's a time you stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves? Your story could be the inspiration someone needs today. Thank you for watching, and stay strong.